August 28, 2009, Santee, California, Highway 125. A desperate voice crackles over the 911 dispatch radio. It is Mark Saylor, a highly disciplined California Highway Patrol officer. He is not in his patrol car. He is in a loaner vehicle, a luxury sedan, traveling with his wife, daughter, and brother-in-law. The vehicle is accelerating uncontrollably. The throttle is stuck wide open. Brakes are failing under the immense thermal load of a 272-horsepower V6 engine fighting against them at full bore. The speedometer climbs past 100 miles per hour, then 110, then 120. The intersection of Mission Gorge Road approaches. The line goes dead. That silence would trigger the largest, most complex, and most financially devastating crisis in the history of the Toyota Motor Corporation. It would strip the world's most respected automaker of its crown of infallibility. It would trigger a recall of over 9 million vehicles. It would involve the United States Congress, NASA scientists, and a Department of Justice investigation. And it would cost the company known for Kaizen, continuous improvement, over $1.2 billion in economic penalties alone, not counting the billions in lost market capitalization. But the crash in San Diego was not the beginning. It was the horrific culmination of a series of engineering choices, supplier changes, and a corporate culture that had become drunk on the pursuit of volume over quality. Deep inside the archives of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, reports of unintended acceleration had been accumulating like a slow-burning fire for years. Tonight, we are not just looking at a car crash. We are performing a forensic autopsy on a corporate disaster. We will dismantle the friction lever mechanism of the CTS accelerator pedal assembly down to the millimeter. We will dive into the 280,000 lines of code inside the Electronic Throttle Control System. We will read the internal emails that Toyota never wanted you to see. And by the end of this documentary, you will understand the terrifying reality of what happens when the ghost in the machine takes control. But there is a piece of evidence, a single document buried in the legal discovery of the class action lawsuit, that suggests the problem wasn't just a floor mat or a sticky pedal. It was something far more systemic, something that might still be lurking in the philosophy of modern automotive manufacturing. What was on that document? We will reveal that in the final minutes of this broadcast. Part 1. The Rise to the Throne. To understand the fall, we must understand the height from which they fell. By 2007, Toyota had done the impossible. They had surpassed General Motors to become the world's largest automaker. The strategy was aggressive global expansion.
They were building factories in Texas, Mississippi, and Canada. The mantra was Global Master Plan. But inside the engineering halls of Toyota City and Aichi Prefecture, a silent alarm was ringing. The company was growing too fast. The legendary Toyota Way, the production system studied by every business school on Earth, was being stretched to its breaking point. Engineers who once had 3 years to develop a new model were now being squeezed to do it in 2. The localization of parts production meant relying on suppliers outside the traditional Japanese keiretsu network. Enter the 2010 Toyota Camry, the master vehicle of our investigation. The Camry was the best-selling car in America. It was the appliance of choice for the suburban family. Reliable, boring, safe, or so we thought. Part 2. The floor mat entrapment. The initial investigation into the Saylor crash focused on a seemingly mundane accessory, the all-weather floor mat. The Lexus ES350 involved in the accident was a loaner vehicle from a dealership. It had been fitted with all-weather rubber mats designed for a different SUV model. These mats were too long. When the driver pushed the accelerator pedal to the floor to merge onto the highway, the bottom edge of the pedal became entrapped by the grooves of the rubber mat. Mechanically, the pedal is a lever. When you press it, a spring compresses. When you release it, the spring pushes the pedal back, closing the throttle plate in the engine. But if the mat hooks the pedal, the spring force isn't enough to overcome the friction of the rubber. The throttle stays open. The engine sucks in air. The fuel injectors fire at maximum duty cycle. The car becomes a missile. Toyota's immediate response was a safety advisory to remove driver-side floor mats. On September 29, 2009, they announced a safety recall for 3.8 million vehicles. The narrative was simple. This is a user error or a dealership error. The car is fine. The mats are the problem. But that narrative began to crumble within weeks. Reports started flooding in from drivers who claimed their cars accelerated uncontrollably even without floor mats present. Drivers who said they were standing on the brake pedal with both feet and the car simply overpowered them. How can a car overpower the brakes? Let's look at the physics. A 2010 Camry V6 generates 268 horsepower.
The braking system is designed to stop the car, but it relies on vacuum assist. When the engine is at wide open throttle, vacuum pressure drops. You lose power braking assist. After 1 or 2 pumps of the brake pedal, the pedal becomes hard as rock. You are now trying to manually clamp the calipers against the spinning rotors of a 3,500-pound vehicle, moving at 100 miles per hour. The brakes overheat. The pads glaze.
Friction creates gas that pushes the pads away from the rotor, a phenomenon known as brake fade. Within seconds, your brakes are useless. Part 3. The sticky pedal. As the scrutiny intensified, a second mechanical failure mode was discovered. This one had nothing to do with floor mats. It was hidden inside the accelerator pedal assembly itself. For the North American market, Toyota sourced accelerator pedals from 2 suppliers, Denso, a Japanese company, and CTS Corporation, an American supplier based in Elkhart, Indiana. The pedals looked identical from the outside, but inside, the engineering was different. The CTS pedal used a friction lever assembly to provide the feel of the pedal. Drivers don't like a pedal that is too floppy. They want a bit of resistance and hysteresis, meaning the pedal stays steady even if your foot jitters slightly. To achieve this, CTS designed a system where a plastic shoe rubbed against a metal surface. Under specific environmental conditions, high humidity and cold temperatures, condensation could form on this friction surface. Over time, the materials could degrade or accumulate moisture, increasing the surface tension. The friction would become too great for the return spring to overcome. You press the gas, and the pedal stays down, not hooked by a mat, just stuck. January 21, 2010, Toyota announces a second recall, 2.3 million vehicles. This time, they suspended sales of 8 of their most popular models, including the Camry, Corolla, and RAV4. They halted production at 5 North American plants. This was unprecedented, a major automaker stopping the sale of its core products. The stock price tanked. The media went into a frenzy. ABC News staged a demonstration where they claimed to induce unintended acceleration in a Toyota Avalon by short-circuiting the electronics. Toyota vehemently denied the validity of the test, proving that ABC had stripped insulation from wires to force the air. But the public trust was broken. The narrative had shifted from floor mats to sticky pedals to ghosts in the electronics. Part 4. The Electronic Throttle Control System, ETCSI. This is where the story moves from mechanical engineering to software forensics. Critics and trial lawyers argued that neither the mats nor the sticky pedals could explain every incident. They pointed to the ETCSI, Electronic Throttle Control System, intelligent. In the old days, a steel cable connected your gas pedal to the engine. You press the pedal, the cable pulls the throttle open. Simple, physical, reliable. In the 2010 Camry, there is no cable. There is a sensor on the pedal that turns your foot pressure into a voltage signal. That signal goes to the engine control module, a computer. The computer processes the signal, checks it against other data, engine temp, traction control, gear selection, and then sends a command to an electric motor on the throttle body to open the valve. This is drive-by-wire. Toyota's system used 2 sensors for redundancy. If the sensors disagreed, the computer should go into limp mode. But what if the computer itself fails? The theory was bit flip, a single event upset. A cosmic ray or electromagnetic interference strikes a memory transistor in the ECM, flipping a 0 to a 1. In the wrong place, this bit flip could theoretically tell the computer open throttle 100% and simultaneously disable the failsafe code that checks for errors. The U.S. government called in NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Who better to debug a complex safety-critical system? NASA engineers spent 10 months analyzing Toyota's source code. They looked at 280,000 lines of code. They bombarded the ECM with radiation. They fried it with electromagnetic interference. In February 2011, the verdict came down. NASA found no evidence that the electronics caused unintended acceleration. They could not replicate a scenario where a software error opened the throttle without generating a fault code that shut the engine down. Transportation Secretary Ri LaHood stood before the press and declared, "The jury is back. The verdict is in. There is no electronic-based cause for unintended acceleration in Toyota vehicles." It seemed like a total exoneration, but was it? Years later, during the trial Bookout v. Toyota, software experts dug deeper. They found that Toyota's code violated their own internal coding standards. They found spaghetti code, complex, tangled logic that is hard to trace. They found a frantic recursion algorithm that could, theoretically, cause a stack overflow.
A stack overflow happens when the computer's temporary memory fills up, overwriting critical data. If the stack overflowed into the memory address that controlled the throttle, theoretically anything could happen. The jury in the Oklahoma case didn't buy the perfect NASA report defense. They found Toyota liable for the crash that killed Barbara Schwartz and Gene Bookout, citing the potential for software error. This forced Toyota to settle countless other lawsuits to avoid further public relations damage. Part 5, the billion-dollar check. While the electronics issue remained a murky battleground of expert witnesses, the Department of Justice focused on what Toyota knew and when they knew it regarding the floor mats and sticky pedals. The investigation revealed that Toyota had identified the sticky pedal issue in Europe months before it appeared in the US. They had changed the design for European models, but failed to alert their US counterparts immediately. Internal documents showed executives celebrating saving $100 million by negotiating a limited recall with NHTSA initially. This hubris was the smoking gun. On March 19, 2014, the U.S. Justice Department announced a criminal wire fraud penalty against Toyota. The fine, $1.2 billion. It was the largest criminal penalty ever imposed on an automaker at that time. Attorney General Eric Holder did not mince words. Toyota intentionally concealed information and misled the public about the safety issues. They put their corporate image ahead of public safety. Toyota admitted to misleading U.S. consumers by concealing and making deceptive statements about the safety issues. They admitted that they minimized the scope of the defects. Part 6, the recovery and the legacy. Toyota paid the fine. They settled the class action lawsuits for another $1.1 billion. The total cost, including recall repairs and lost sales, is estimated to be over $5 billion. But the company did not die. Akio Toyoda, the grandson of the founder, bowed deeply in apology before the U.S. Congress. He took personal responsibility. He reorganized the company to give more autonomy to regional safety executives so that decisions didn't have to go all the way to Japan for approval, a bottleneck that had slowed their response time. They introduced brake override systems, BOS, across the lineup. This is software that tells the computer, if the brake and gas are pressed at the same time, ignore the gas, cut the engine. It is a simple line of code that could have saved Mark Saylor and his family. Today, the 2010 Toyota Camry is still on the road, millions of them. They are reliable, high-mileage workhorses. The recall fixes worked. The CTS pedals were reinforced with a precision-cut steel shim to reduce friction. The floor mats were redesigned. But the scars remain. The Toyota crisis changed the automotive industry forever. It forced every manufacturer to reevaluate their software validation processes. It proved that in the digital age, a mechanical car is only as safe as the code that runs it. And now, the open loop. That document I mentioned at the beginning, the one buried in Discovery, it was a memo from a Toyota engineering group discussing the integration of the ETCSI software. In the margins, a handwritten note from a senior manager simply asked, "Is the failsafe robust enough for the American driving style?" The question was never answered in writing. It implies a cultural disconnect that no amount of engineering could bridge. The assumption that the driver will always behave predictably.
But in that moment on Highway 125, when panic set in, when physics took over, predictability vanished. The Toyota recall taught us that safety is not just about engineering margins or steel tensile strength. It is about transparency. It is about the humility to admit when the machine has outpaced a master. Toyota regained the title of the world's largest automaker. Their quality ratings returned to the top. But for one brief, terrifying window in history, the unblemished giant blinked, and it cost them $1 billion to open their eyes again. I'm Enju, and this has been a forensic deep dive into the Toyota recall crisis. If you drive a modern car, remember, you are not just a driver. You are a system administrator. Drive safe.